At this time, I would like to ask Jeremy Kijundu to please come forward. Welcome, Jeremy. Please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Jeremy Kigundu, and I am a senior in the Aerospace Engineering and Aviation Technology program, also known as the AAT program at Duval High School. At Duval, I have participated as the president of the National Honor Society and a member of the mock trial team and drone pilot flight training club. I have also taken 5 advanced placement courses and 7 dual enrollment courses over my high school career, earning a total of 24 college credits, and have been able to maintain a GPA of 4.0. Outside of school, I have interned at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab and have presented my research on cybersecurity recommendations at Princeton University. I have also had the opportunity to have my research published by the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. I have completed another research project with 2 of my AAT classmates, Sylvish Ramu and Soleil Chapman, which was presented at the Young Professionals, Students and Educators Conference this past November. I enjoy giving back to my community and serving as a role model for my peers in the AAT program. My long-term goal is to become an engineer, and I have received 2 offers to intern with the U.S. Department of Defense this upcoming summer and to become a full-time employee after I graduate college. I am a proud senior at Duval High School, and I am ready for college and my future. Now, I would like to welcome you to the January 9th, 2020 Prince George's County Board of Education meeting. Highlights this evening will include the news break, PGCPS at a glance. Please continue to check www.pgcps.org for upcoming Board of Education meetings and events. And now, the January 9th, 2020 Board of Education meeting will begin.
Good evening and welcome to the January 9th Board of Education meeting. Let me again thank Jeremy for the introduction of our meeting. Jeremy, you are an exemplar of our school system, and the Board of Education is very proud of you. You represent what we mean to the Prince George's County community, and thank you, sir. I would like everyone to please turn off your wireless communication devices as they may interfere with our meetings. I'd like to ask Ms. Williams to please lead us in the board prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance.
O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, steer us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Ellis, would you now please call the roll?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Ms. Ahmed. Here. Ms. Boozer-Strother.
Here.
Mr. Burrows.
Here.
Mr. Montero.
Here.
Mr. Murray.
Here.
Mr. Omalola.
Here.
Ms. Queen. Mrs. Shepherd. Mr. Thomas.
Present.
Mr. Valentine. Mr. Wallace.
Present.
Mrs. Williams.
Present.
Dr. Thornton.
Present. Colleagues, we'll now turn our attention to the agenda for our January 9th meeting. We have an emergency item which is listed under your agenda as item 8.1. We'll move that with your consent to the consent agenda section. With that modified agenda, I'd like a motion to adopt it.
So moved.
It's properly moved and seconded that the modified agenda for January 9th be approved. Hearing no discussion or dissent, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. The ayes have it. Would you please now turn your attention to the board's minutes of December 12th, our CFO FY21 budget presentation. Motion to approve those minutes. It's been properly moved and seconded that the minutes from our budget presentation of December 12th be approved. Any questions or modifications? Hearing none, those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposing, no. The ayes have it. The chair's report, colleagues, I want to briefly make a comment about the Kerwin Commission initiative. As you can see, the General Assembly opened on yesterday to much acclaim. We're so excited about the new leadership of our General Assembly with our new Senate President, Mr. Ferguson, Senator Ferguson, and the new Speaker of the House, Speaker Adrian Jones. I was most pleased, and I'm sure you all are, with their strong commitment to full passage of the Kerwin Commission, or the Commission on Innovation and Excellence, and full funding of it. I also want to express my appreciation on behalf of the board, I think, for the community conversations that's taking place around Kerwin, being led by our county council members and our delegates. Many board members are participating in those. So there's a great excitement about Kerwin, and the Speaker of the House, as well as our Senate President, said that that's going to be #1 priority. You all know that last year, as Dr. Golson pointed out, our budget process would have been much more difficult if we had not gotten our Kerwin funding, more than $50 million of that funding. So there's great excitement. I don't want to create artificial expectations, though it's going to be very difficult. We're going to need the strong support of the people of Prince George's County. We're going to need strong support of our delegates and senators as they make the very difficult choices that they're going to have to make about revenue sources. But we're going to do as we did 17 years ago. We're going to have the discussion. We're going to make some hard choices. And we're going to do what most people think was impossible. We're going to pass Kerwin. We're going to fully fund our schools. And we're going to give the students the support that they need. So please stay engaged. Find ways of holding sessions in your communities, civic associations, churches, and religious organizations and other places. The board members and I will be available to come and speak. I'm sure delegates and others will be able to do that. Let us not be stampeded against each other around questions of taxation. Those are artificial. That's artificial. It's premature. Let's now talk about what Kerwin is, why it's so important for our children, why we cannot ask them morally and politically and responsibly to perform at a level that we are not willing to resource. We're not going to do that to our children. We didn't do it in 2002 when we did Thornton, and we're not going to do it this time. So I want to thank the public on behalf of the board for its engagement with Kerwin, and let's go forward. In March, I'm sure we'll do what we did 17 years ago. We will have done what nobody expected. We're going to pass Kerwin, as the Speaker said and the President said, and we're going to fully fund it. With that, I want to ask you to please join me in honoring the memory of several of our staff members and former staff members who have passed since we last met. Kelly Elliott is a teacher from the Glendale Elementary School, passed. Austin Yates, a night custodian at the Robert Goddard Montessori School. Kevin Coleman, a night custodian at the Benjamin Filloy Creative Performing Arts School. And a long-serving senator, former Senator Ulysses Curry, also a school principal in Prince George's County, long-serving principal as well as a delegate, who passed since we last met. And Dr. Joseph Joe Harrison, the first African-American superintendent of the Baltimore County Public School System, and an associate superintendent here in Prince George's County, and a very successful principal who passed. Please join me in a moment of silence for those individuals. Thank you very much. Some highlights, and I may be stepping on Dr. Golson's toes a little bit. I apologize, Dr. Golson. On January 20th, schools and offices will be closed for the National Martin Luther King holiday. January 27th, there will be a 3-hour early dismissal of students for a professional day for teachers. And there are upcoming meetings of the board's committees, and I want to take this opportunity to thank our committees and the leadership of those committees for the excellent work that they're doing on behalf of the board. On January 13th, our Policy and Governance Committee, led by Ms. Ahmed, will be meeting. That's at 4 p.m. The public is invited. You can't participate and say anything, but you can come and observe. On January 15th, our Committee on Academic Achievement, which is being led effectively by Mr. Montero, will meet at 5:30. And on January the 21st, we'll start to hold our budget hearings. As you know, at our last session, Dr. Golson presented what I think is a very excellent budget proposal for FY21. We'll start our budget hearings, work sessions on January 21st. The first one will be at Northwestern High School, and that will start at 7 p.m. And I want to thank Mr. Wallace and the OBAFA committee for doing the preparatory work for that. On January 23rd, we'll have our next board meeting. There may be some modification of that to the public. Look out for that. The board may decide to not have that meeting, but we'll let you know about that. On January 28th, we'll have our second budget hearing at the Charles Flowers High School, starting at 7 p.m. with a work session starting at 5, and then the budget hearing will start at 7. Again, board meetings are held here at SASA, and we invite you to come and participate or observe us via television and sign up to speak before us. And I'll now turn the floor to our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Golson, for her report. Dr. Golson.
Thank you. We skipped item 2.6, the news break. Do you want to come back to that?
I want to do that before you speak, and thank you, and I apologize to you for doing that.
No problem.
Let's have the news break.
It's wintertime, and just as we're thinking of the holidays, we're also thinking about just staying warm. So what better gifts than a new pair of gloves and a new hat from Santa's helpers to warm the heart.
You better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town.
For the 9th year in a row, some of Bowie High School's finest students became the most selfless, turning themselves into elves for a day and distributing hats and gloves that they'd bought and wrapped themselves to students in need of both. Calling their generous program Warm Hands, Warm Hearts, the students this year descended on District Heights Elementary, where each and every one of the school's 455 children from grades K through 6 got a set of fuzzy favors from Santa's helpers. And as the wrapping paper flew and Bowie's bulldog mascot high-fived all around, it was hard to tell who was enjoying themselves the most. Do you like it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Where are your gloves? Huh?
Right?
Yeah. Do they match?
Yes.
So do you feel a little bit like Santa or one of his elves?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. It felt like a real Santa's workshop when we were getting everything together.
We actually, I think, have more fun than they do, just because it's my guys get the opportunity to give back and to be a part of something special, and I love that. It always makes my heart, just like the Grinch, man. My heart grows like 3 times every single year.
Santa's minions were also busy at Oxon Hill High School at an annual celebration they call Clipper Claus. She had no beard, nor a tummy that shook like a bowl full of jelly. But when the students from Flintstone, Forest Heights, and Glass Manor elementary schools sat next to Oxon Hill principal Marcy Holland, she was every bit a Santa Claus. Together, for the 9th year, student government elves and Mrs. Clipper Claus passed out gifts, painted faces with tiny gingerbread men, let the kids shoot some hoops, and otherwise just filled themselves up with holiday cheer.
This is an opportunity for us to give back to our feeder elementary schools. Our high school students get the opportunity to serve them and help them to enjoy the holiday season.
I feel as though it's important because everyone needs love, even the kids who don't feel love. You know, the activities give them a sense of having fun and a sense of Christmas joy that they might not get everywhere else.
It feels good to me personally because before I wasn't really into community service. I didn't do a lot of community service activities, but now being a part of SGA, I've been doing a lot of community service, and I'm just recognizing everybody from different backgrounds, their beliefs, and everyone, and just celebrating everyone. Everybody deserves to be celebrated.
Of course, some gifts transcend the holiday. At Judith P. Hoyer Elementary, the whole school gathered to say thanks to Judith's husband, with a memento that, like those hats and gloves at District Heights, set Steny Hoyer's heart aglow.
The Terrapin and Bulldog represent where he went to college at the University of Maryland and Georgetown University.
The apple represents where he was originally from, New York.
New York?
A lot of thought went into this. A lot of thought, a lot of talent, and I very, very much appreciate all these symbols of my life.
And the tributes didn't end there. Witness the special plaque acknowledging all the congressman's support for the school and the Montessori program over the years.
And it reads, with our deepest appreciation, presented to Congressman Steny L. Hoyer. Thank you for your loyal support of our school community and distinguished service to the state of Maryland. December 16, 2019, Judith P. Hoyer Montessori School, Prince George's County, Maryland. All right.
But gracious as ever, the congressman turned his awards program into a celebration of the children, many of whom serenaded him with their angelic voices.
I just love to come here because in all the fighting and weeping and gnashing of teeth that we go through in the public sphere, we come here and we see this is what is important. And we ought to come together and agree that this needs to be our most successful enterprise.
So share the joy this holiday season. And like the children and the adults just did, and as we saw, make sure you tell the people around you how special they are. I'm Dave Zarin. Happy holidays.
Now, Dr. Gosen.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome back. I hope students and staff had a restful winter break and are recharged and ready to kick off the new year with lots of energy and enthusiasm. Throughout December, not only did our high school students embrace and show love and support to our students, but our partners in the community showed their support of our students through a variety of special events and donations. I would like to extend a special thank you to NBC4, Telemundo, and TD Bank, who donated 10 new Chromebooks to Hyattsville Middle School, Dark Cars Motors for clearing out over $18,000 in school lunch debt, and our partners at MGM for acknowledging 5 outstanding employees. Their heartfelt generosity helped to make the holiday season special. There are some important deadlines coming up. Registration for evening high school begins January 21st, and classes begin February 3rd. Please check our website for details, as there are specific registration dates for appointments, walk-ins, and graduating seniors. And if you're interested in enrolling in one of our many exciting specialty programs, the deadline for most of those programs is March 12th. And lastly, applications for all charter schools must be received by January 31st. For additional details, please visit our website. This week, we had our first sampling of wintry weather. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to visit our website and sign up to receive automatic notifications by email or text message when schools and offices will open late or be closed due to inclement weather. We also share our status with local media outlets, so you can check online news sites or tune in to your local news stations. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gosen, for your report. We'll now turn to the public comment section of our agenda. We have 15 registered speakers. I'd ask you to please abide by the restrictions that were cited to you when you signed up. We'll ask now our first speaker, Nzea Osaya, to please come forward, who's a student from Parkdale High School, who's another one of our Posse scholars. So we're also proud of you, sir.
So today I wanted to speak on financial literacy being a graduation requirement for the county. As my junior year, I took financial literacy, and undoubtedly it was the most important class I've taken in all of high school. I took a lot of classes in high school. But in that class, I learned such things as the difference between credit and debit, how to save, insurance, basic factors of life that you can't really say that you learn in other classes. Like, it's a direct translation to my life. And unfortunately, when I tell other people I took the class, they're just like, oh, we don't have to take that, so they'll just ignore it. Because so many people, they don't realize it till they're much older, till they have bills that they pay. Wow, my finances are important, and I should understand that. But through the financial literacy program the classes I took, I gained so much from it. And I think that it should be a graduation requirement, because no matter what career field a student goes in, whether they want to be an archaeologist, a president, a politician, anything like that, they have to know how to handle their finances, because that's their way to success. We can all attest here that, while money isn't everything, how our finances are managed can determine a lot of the decisions that we make in our life. So financial literacy plays into that. It teaches kids skills that will work for them in their lives, how to handle money, because that's a big facet of it. And I took a survey in my school amongst freshmen, sophomores, and juniors about whether they would be interested in financial literacy, and over 70% of the students that I surveyed said that they were interested in it. They may not have known what it was, but they understood that viewing from their homes, since they're in a minority background, they've seen that their parents have struggled with their finances, and they see how much a strain they put in their life. So they're seeking this knowledge. So it's not like students don't want to know, they don't want to learn it. They want the opportunity to do it. So making it a graduation requirement, while they might not see it in the short term, they will appreciative of it. They're like, wow, I already know how to handle credit. I won't be in credit card debt as much. I know the difference between a grant and a loan, because a lot of seniors that I know in my high school, we're getting ready to go to college, and the idea of loans just terrifies us because we don't want to be in so much debt. But now, if they had financial literacy, they could be like, well, all right, instead of this loan, let me go look for some grants. Oh, what's a grant? It's just free money. Like, it's better than a loan. Understand what interest rate is, so they're more careful for what they sign up with. So financial literacy is just this part of life that all students will have to tackle with, so we shouldn't deny them any of that right. And I concede my time.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Nejah Joseph, a student at Frederick Douglass High School, regarding school safety. Please come forward.
Hello, everybody. My name is Denea Joseph, and I am an IB student at Frederick Douglass High School, and I'm in 10th grade. Mainly all my life, I've been in Prince George's County School, and I loved it, until I got to Suitland High School, where I was constantly in fear and constantly dismissed by administration. An incident happened when my mother, a substitute teacher at my school, got assaulted by a student, and after that, the same student attacked me. I was suspended 2 days after the incident. The student threatened me and posted things on social media degrading me, and I showed the principal, and he did nothing. Not one mediation on the school's behalf was attempted, no counseling or no parent meeting. Days after that incident, a young student was inside of the school building near the main office, and another man in front of him, making him clear out his pants, pockets, and shoes, literally strip searching him in front of everyone. This was recorded and posted on social media and went viral. I had to get transferred out of that school. The day I came to school to get transferred, the same girl that attacked me was roaming around the halls when she was supposed to be suspended. Daily, I see students that do not attend the school just there. Daily, I have to walk through halls smelling like marijuana. The halls smell like marijuana. There are multiple fights happening today, and nothing is being done about it. Teachers are leaving day by day. Within a year, 1/4 of our teachers have left. Before I transferred, I had 2 permanent substitutes, and my French teacher had just quit, a class that I need to graduate. I shouldn't have to come to school fearing that anyone could just enter the school or leave whenever they please. I shouldn't be limited to education with the loss of teachers and the lack of resources in our classrooms. If I feel this way and are experiencing these things, I know others are too. We need safety in our school system, and we need leaders that take our concerns seriously. I don't want to wait till a child or a teacher is seriously hurt or even dead before we start making these changes. I would like to request to sit and meet with Dr. Monica Gosen and students to figure out solutions to these problems. Thank you for your time, and I hope this does not continue to be ignored. And thank you, Carletta Merrill, for helping me with my transfer.
Thank you, Ms. Josephs, for your comments. The next speaker is Jesse Simmons, an individual regarding library media services.
Good evening, Chairman, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jessie Simmons, and I'm the full-time library media specialist at Largo High School. Over the last 6 years, I've had many opportunities to operate in my various roles. As teacher librarian, I'm able to attend department meetings and share resources with teachers that they use to enhance their instruction and to equip students with skills necessary for their academic success. During these collaborative planning meetings, we also have an opportunity to look at the curriculum, and I'm able to share specific resources or schedule co-taught classes like basics of MLA formatting for 9th grade classes. As program administrator earlier this year, I set up a collaborative meeting with the public librarian, our English department chair, and myself to brainstorm ideas and find resources, print, non-print, and human, to support one of the department's initiatives. As instructional partner, I collaborated with the World Languages Department, sharing resources available through the public library system that support student learning and mastery. Resources like Rosetta Stone in the past, which this year has been changed to Mango. I've shared with them that all of our students have access to the public library resources through the link collaboration and demonstrate how students are able to access these resources. My students also find the Media Center an inviting place where they can come to work on individual projects and assignments. They read, check out books, ask questions, get assistance with help on how to access the best resources. These examples are just the tip of the iceberg of the services I provide to empower my community. I'm able to do all these things because I am only responsible for one school. Since 1992, a growing body of research known as the School Library Impact Studies has consistently shown positive correlations between high-quality library programs and student achievement. Gretz 2013, Scholastics 2016. Several library impact studies suggest test scores tend to be higher where administrators, teachers, and librarians themselves think of the school librarian as a school leader, a teacher, co-teacher, in-service professional development provider, a curriculum designer, instructional resource manager, reading motivator, technology teacher, troubleshooter, and a source of instructional support, Lance and Schwartz, 2012. It is based on this evidence and the impact that I make in my community that I stand here tonight and ask you to consider staffing every school, elementary through high school, with a full-time certified library media specialist. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. The next speaker is Robin Kravitz regarding military service.
Thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak to you. Board members and staff, please join me on a quick exercise. I promise it won't be painful. I ask that you all close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Challenge your mind to escape today's hustle and bustle, and instead imagine yourself as your little child. Be you when you were 7, when you were 8. Take a moment. Think of that person in your life, that family member who means so much to you. Get in a big, tight hug with them. Do they have a special smell that makes you feel calm? What do their hands look like? What is their smile? Do you remember that hug? Can you see their eyes lighting up when they smile at you? Sit in that tight hug for one more moment. Now zoom out. Find yourself in that hug in a military hangar. You're saying goodbye to them. They're getting on an airplane and they're flying to the other side of the world. You have an idea when they're going to be home. Maybe about 12 months. Hopefully. They're going to miss your birthday. You're going to miss their birthday. They won't be here to hold your hand when you scrape your knee on the tree you were climbing in your backyard. They won't be at that awards ceremony at your school. They won't be at the big game. They won't be cheering you on from the sidelines. Instead, they're in the Middle East fighting a war that's been ongoing your entire life. After all, you're only 7, you're only 8. Finally, be that child still and return to school after saying goodbye to them, to find out that your absence is unexcused. You were preparing for this deployment with your family. You come back to school to find out that the test you missed, the assessment you missed is a 0. Our school system does not excuse absences for children of military members saying goodbye to that family member giving them a hug. This is the response that we've recently received when our family went through this. Please be advised, all the work you will be provided to ensure you can keep up with your studies, but since those missed days will count as unexcused, all work's going to receive a score of a 0. Board, staff, COMAR section 13A 08.01.03 paragraph J empowers us as a community, as a Board of Education, and as a CEO to make allowances as we see fit. Please find it to see fit that our military children get excused absences when it's needed.
Thank you, Ms. Kravitz. The next speaker is Susan Bristranson, an individual regarding financial literacy. And if Ms. Susan Johnson would prepare to speak following Ms. Bristranson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Susan Bristranson. I am a family and consumer sciences teacher from Parkdale High School, and I'm here to talk about financial literacy education. So many people tell me that they wish financial education courses had been offered when they were in high school. They all agree that credit cards, credit scores, balancing a budget, student loans, retirement funds are essential to being a successful adult. The Council on Economic Education's annual survey shows right now there are only 19 states that require high school students to take a personal finance course to graduate, and Maryland is not one of them. The Maryland State Department of Education did create a financial literacy curriculum and mandate that it be offered to all students K through 12 in 2011. It is left to individual counties to mandate the course, and at this time, 7 Maryland counties require a financial literacy course for graduation, and Prince George's is not one of them. However, we have everything already in place to make this happen. Currently being taught in all of our high schools through the Family and Consumer Sciences Department is a course called Financial Literacy for Teens. I was one of the originators of the writing of the curriculum in one of its first iterations, and it's been going on for over 22 years because that's as long as I've been teaching it at Parkdale High School. In addition to that state-approved curriculum, we have access to a free online certification course with the EverFi Financial Literacy Group, and MSDE also piloted an online course for those students who can't fit it into their schedule. Currently, I reach 185 students through my financial literacy course at Parkdale High School out of 2,500. That means only 7% of our students are getting this information that is so vital in a standalone course. Financial literacy is offered as an elective through CTE, FACS department at all Prince George's high schools this year. But that's not always the case. When staffing or funding is short, elective courses are the first to go. I'm reminded of something that one of my college nutrition professors once said: a plate full of broccoli is not nutritious unless it's eaten. And if you ask a teenager to do something that's important but tell them they really don't have to, well, we know how that rolls. On the first day of my class, I always tell my students, you know, this is an elective class, but you've been in school for 11, 12 years. When you get out of school, you learned a lot, but you may never quote Shakespeare again or use the Pythagorean theorem. But you are going to use every concept I teach you in this course every day for the rest of your life. Does that sound like it needs to be an elective course? My request this evening is that we give every student the financial skills they need to thrive. All of the pieces are in place for a Prince George's County graduation mandate.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Suzanne Johnson regarding the school calendar. And is Ms. Johnson here? I don't see Ms. Johnson, so I will next call on Ms. Teresa Dudley, Mitchell Dudley, who's the president of the PGCEA Union. Ms. Dudley. Regarding Black Lives Matter in schools.
If it is okay with the chair, I have someone further to speak about Black Lives Matter, and I would like to talk about the Maryland General Assembly session.
So that person has signed up?
Yes, she has. Melvina Barton, I believe she's the second to the last person on your list. I
Very-
spoke about it
that's
at the
very
last
good.
meeting.
Thank you, thank you.
Is that okay with you, sir?
That's fine, yes.
So I wanted to, first of all, wish everybody a Happy New Year. It is wonderful to have a life and a job in purpose, and I feel blessed to be here. I do want to say that we have a great purpose, not just as members of the education community here in Prince George's County, but as the leaders in public education in the county. This year, more than any other year, is critical for us to be lock, stock, and in barrel, working on making sure that the things that we need for our children are put forth by the state of Maryland. With the beginning of legislative session, there were two bills in particular that were dropped. Number one is the Build to Learn Act of 2020, which would enable Prince George's County to participate in the P3 programs and allow us to build schools. I humbly ask that this Board of Education support this bill in Annapolis and work with your legislative directors to do whatever we need to do to make it happen. The second piece is the Blueprint for Excellence legislation, which I believe is HB 2, House Bill 2, which would provide funding for provide the formula. I'm sorry, I think it's still the anesthesia. The funding formula and the funding for the funding formula that we need to make sure that our children receive what they need to receive in Prince George's County. 25% of our schools are being converted to community schools, and it is imperative that we all work together to make sure that the funding doesn't end after the 2 years that the down payment that the General Assembly put in place. So what I'm requesting also is that this board take a position in favor of that legislation and make sure we do whatever we can to work collaboratively together as a body to make it happen. And Prince George's County Educators Association is committed to making sure that the Kirwan Commission formula is adopted and funded. And I thank you very much for your time tonight, and I wish you all a very happy New Year.
Thank you, Madam President. The next speaker is Renee Coltrane, individual regarding military-affiliated families. And if Alta Hayes would prepare to speak next.
Hello.
Hello?
How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. I am a military spouse, a mother of two, a teacher, and a certified school counselor. I have 13 plus years teaching the grades pre-K through college level. I currently work for the Air Force and their voluntary education department. Can I see a show of hands of how many board members have military affiliation, prior service, or spouse? Okay. My family and I moved to Joint Base Andrews in June 2019. We chose to live on base, and we chose to put our children in Francis T. Evans, which is the school zoned for the base, even though they were both picked in the Andrews lottery, which is the charter school on base. After investigating both campuses, my husband and I felt like it was a better fit for our family. We have felt supported by the administration of the school. My first grader had 32 students in his class, and the administration worked to hire another teacher so that that class size could be smaller. We had an aggressive issue with another student, a physically aggressive issue with another student happened to my oldest son outside of school, and the school stepped in and helped us tremendously, and we're appreciative of that. We feel heard when issues are arising, and that we're thankful for that as well. However, we have had some struggles. I have requested a speech evaluation that has not been addressed. I requested that back in September and was told that speech therapists are far and few in between in the district, and because his issue is not affecting academics, that would be on the back burner. Time is of the essence. We're only scheduled to be here another year. My oldest child has already been enrolled in 5 different schools as a 4th grader. My 1st grader has been enrolled in 2 different schools, and this is all related to PCS and military-affiliated life. Definitely not our desire, but it is a sacrifice that we make so that my husband can serve the country. There are several other policies that hurt military-affiliated families, like the attendance policy, charter school lottery, definitely is not supportive of the PCS schedule, which is the permanent change of station. There is a lack of military understanding in Prince George's County and what our families need to be successful in a school district. I am asking that we have a better dialogue between board members and military-affiliated members so that we can better support our military-affiliated children and help them to be successful like all other children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Alter Hayes, Central High School Alumni Association. She's not here. The next speaker is Martin Diggs regarding professionalism in the workplace. Mr. Diggs is not here. The next speaker is Michelle Clark regarding outsourcing related matters. Ms. Clark is not here. Michael Dixon, individual mandatory financial literacy classes. Mr. Dixon.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm a lifelong resident. As you know, my name is Michael Dixon. I'm a lifelong resident, graduate of the school system, pastor, PTSA president, and community steward. By now, everyone knows the proverb that encourages those who have a heart to help others to equip them by helping them to provide for themselves. We are to show people how to fish rather than feed them with fish, because then we've only served them one time. This evening, I would like to request that we teach our students how to fish by teaching them financial literacy in high school. Our minimum wage has gone up to assist us with living in the region. Transit is going to improve with the advent of the Purple Line. The CTE track for students will poise them to make money, but without financial literacy, management of money earned may prove elusive. I cannot imagine what it would be like to navigate the world or this county without knowing how to read. Thank God when I graduated from Bowie High School a long time ago, I had some reading proficiency. What I can imagine, well, I don't have to imagine it because I have seen it, is what it looks like for people to navigate the world with minimal financial literacy. Having to learn how to manage money through the consequences of mismanagement can set our students back, and we don't want that. RealtyTrack.com in their November 19th post, their November 2019 post, said that 1 in 785 houses in our county are in foreclosure. In the part of the county that I work in, which feeds into Parkdale High School, those rates are a little bit higher. Being career ready means that there has to be some level of financial literacy upon graduation. Though classes are offered, as has been stated before, these classes are currently electives. So I advocate that these classes become a requirement before graduation. It would definitely not be a class that students will refer to as one that they never needed once they graduated. Far from that sentiment, students would begin using what they learned in financial literacy class whenever they had money. We all know that money isn't everything, but many of us have experienced the difference between merely surviving and thriving. If we had a choice, we would choose to thrive every time. Let's position our students to do the same by teaching them to use money as a tool, beginning with mandatory financial literacy classes before graduation. One day, maybe one day, they will thank you the way Kevin Durant, Quinn Cook, and other graduates of Means have by reinvesting the money they are managing in the school system that invested in them. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. The next speaker is Habib Ajar regarding the Eid holiday. Please come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
It's an honor for me to be here this evening. And good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. I come here this evening to impress in the minds of the school board official that it is essential to make some sort of accommodation to grant our request for Eid holiday. My organization, PGCMC, which I represent this evening, is primarily in charge of orchestrating Muslim interests in the area, as well as reaffirming its commitment for supporting the Eid holiday. As I stand here this evening, I believe that the school board prides itself on religious freedom and equality. In reality, I'm not here to speak verbosely, but rather what I would like to see is an actual commitment, to having a school calendar that reflect and honor of the Eid holiday as part of the extraordinary diversity that this school board is known for articulating equality for all students at Prince George's County. And thank you so much for allowing me to be here and to speak on behalf of issues that we are primarily more concerned about.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Melvinia Barton Jones regarding the Black Lives Matter initiative. Ms. Barton Jones.
Good evening. My name is Melvina Barton Jones, and I serve as a library media specialist at Kettering and Kingsford Elementary. I stand before you this evening as a member of Prince George's County Educators Association Restorative Practice Committee member. I'm a lifelong member of Prince George's County Public Schools and a graduate of Prince George's County Public Schools as well. I have fond memories of my time here in the system. Our committee, in conjunction with the National Educators Association and the Maryland State Educators Association, are currently planning stages for the annual celebration of Black Lives Matter for the school year 2020. We have a full week of events planned to bring attention to the national demands of the movement, as well as engage our community members through the discussion and activities aimed at encouraging activism around racial and social justice issues affecting members of the Prince George's County community. Whereas this committee asks that the Prince George's County Board of Education encourage teachers and other staff and students to participate in the Black Lives Matter week of academic and extracurricular activities in schools to be held during the period of February 3rd through February the 7th, 2020. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Zena Whitworth regarding individual safety.
Good evening, everyone. We are working in an at-risk environment. Whenever the power of leadership, security, and teachers are taken away and placed in the hand of policy and not people, the results end up with staff being subjected to verbal, mental, and physical abuse. Policy that is created by those who do not work in the schoolhouse and signed off by those who have not worked in the schoolhouse in over a decade fail to understand the dynamics of a county, city, or town that is being gentrified. Overcrowded classrooms, understaffed buildings, and lack of empathy or sympathy for those who work in the schoolhouse leads to unnecessary violence and long-term mental health issues such as stress and anxiety. Imagine going to work thinking about how the lesson plan you worked on in lieu of spending time with your own children, skipping homework and dinner with your family just because you want to make an impact on the 30-plus students or 200-plus students on your caseload. When all of a sudden, flash forward, you're sitting in a jail for an entire weekend with no bail offered, wondering, how did I get here? This is a topic of teachers. Hundreds of teachers who watched the video and said, that could have been me. A teacher faces criminal charges because of a failed system, poor policy, poor leadership, disgruntled security, and overworked, underpaid staff. The safety of the adults and children is the topic of discussion, because how can one teacher learn if they fear being attacked verbally, mentally, or physically? The language coming from the youth and the actions of leadership is making teaching and learning impossible. How are we going to address the unruly students and administration that serves as bullies and order to meet their job demands or unrealistic expectations based on data not human growth and development. A step-by-step resource created by educators for educators can make it easier for NEA leaders and school district administrators and principals to keep schools safe, so teachers can teach and children can learn. The Student and Teacher Safety Act, which will help ensure a safe teaching and learning environment in all public schools. NEA believes that a safe and effective learning climate is necessary for promoting educational excellence in public schools. All students and education employees must be safe from violence, and procedures must be in place to prevent and eliminate all types of disruption or harassment that may occur. Bullying is systematically and chronically inflicting physical hurt or psychological distress on another. Bullying can be physical, verbal, or social. Bullying is not just child's play, but a frightening experience many students, teachers face every day. It can be as direct as teasing, hitting, threatening, destruction of property, or forcing someone to do something against their will, or as indirect as in rumors, exclusion, or manipulation. Bullying involves a real or perceived power imbalance between the one who bullies and their target. Teachers are working in an at-risk environment and therefore deserve at-risk pay, and compensation to handle the stress that stems from both student and leadership. My ask is for parity in pay for DC, Montgomery, and Virginia. I also ask for a timeout for staff and students and a specialist that deal with anxiety, stress, and last, smaller class sizes.
Thank you very much for your comments. And thanks to all who came to the board to speak tonight. We will now move to the consent agenda, and Dr. Golston, I would ask you to introduce items 4.1 through 4.5.
Items 4.1 through 4.5 requires board approval of proclamations commemorating African American Read-In Month, National African American History Month, Career and Technical Education Month, and Professional School Counseling Week. All of these observances are during the month of February 2020.
Colleagues, a motion is in order to approve items 4.1 through 4.5.
So moved.
Properly moved and seconded. Hearing no discussions. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. The ayes have it. Colleagues, the matter before us now is the resolution, the emergency resolution regarding Black Lives Matter, item 8.1. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded that the emergency item regarding Black Lives Matter be approved. Hearing no discussions or questions, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. The ayes have it. We will now move to the budget consent agenda, items 5.1 through 5.4. Dr. Golston, I'll ask you to introduce those items. We will pull 5.1 for discussion.
Items 5.2 through 5.4 requires board approval for the purchase of Pioneer Valley level libraries for selected schools, expenditure requirements for February 2020, and budget reassignment over $500,000 in restricted funds.
Colleagues, a motion is in order for discussion regarding items 5.1, 5.3, and 5.4.
No,
Some properly moved and seconded that the board approves 5.2, 5.3, and 5.4. Hearing no discussions. Oh, I didn't see your light. Okay, I see it now. Ms. Williams.
I have a question regarding 5.3, the expenditure report. As always, I appreciate this information that's on page 4.4 because it enables me to track our trends on spending line item by line item. It's very good. And I see that it's from July to October, so it seems to be in alignment. My question really is around the food services portion. We have some discussion about the ability to feed all students all meals and for us to cover it. Can you, because this is a subsidized service, I see that there is a $0 that expended because I understand that it's subsidized from a federal government or something to that effect. How would this change if we were to implement something like feeding all of our students all meals?
So what you see here in this chart is just the portion that's actually in our operating fund. The vast majority of the money for food service goes through a non-operating fund, the Food and Nutrition Services. So if there was funding added to the budget that would serve students that aren't eligible for free and reduced price meals, it would show up here and it would expend throughout the year as it would show up here in the what would be next year the FY 2021 budget column, and it would expend throughout the year as expenditures were made for those students, but it would be on the operating side.
Correct. So you're saying that the to feed students that are not on the free and reduced meal plan, if we were to cover that cost in our budget, it would be more than $2.1 million that would increase. Do we know by how much? By how much?
I do not have that estimate, but we could get that for you.
One of my colleagues. You go ahead. Okay. Well, I just think that I want to just follow that line item as we go through the budget and we begin to talk about that conversation, where that impact, where it will impact us and how it's going to, we're going to have to make some decisions on that line item if we choose to move in that direction. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to offer offline conversation to Ms. Williams. It's been a particular topic of interest for me, and I'll be happy to share any data that I have.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, the motion is on 5.2, 5.3, and 5.4. We'll come back to 5.1. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposing, no. The ayes have it. A motion is in order regarding 5.1 for discussion. Is there a second to the motion? It's been properly moved and seconded. The board approves 5.1 for discussion. Ms. Ahmed.
Yes, Dr. Goldson, this is a contract to provide speech and language therapy to some of our students, which I'm glad it's very much needed. I was just wondering if, I understand that there was an emergency vendor last year before. I was wondering how much did we spend on them?
Dr. Mason will respond, but this is also a vendor that we did use last year.
Okay.
Yes, this is the vendor that we did use last year, and it was a part of our initial pilot, and then we were able to use them last year, spending up to approximately about $300,000 to $400,000 for that particular product. So we're delighted that with the board's approval, that we will be able to expand and ensure the provision of speech services for our students in our district, since we've had long-standing speech and language pathology vacancies for many, many years.
Great. So just to reiterate what you're saying, making sure that I'm understanding correctly, we had a pilot program with this vendor last year. They're doing good work. It went out to bid probably again, and now we're coming back with a bigger version of it.
That is correct.
Okay. I just wanted to ask as a follow-up item, if you could please submit the list of the 22 schools that the vendor, if this board approves, will be working with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. Mr. Valentine. Oh, sorry, Mr. Thomas.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My understanding was also the same as what you just shared with Ms. Ahmed. This is definitely an issue that hits home for me as a former educator. And Dr. Goldson, you know, my partner is a speech and language pathologist, so I care a lot about speech services for our students. My question is, do we have any data on how this has been, what kind of results this has been producing for our students over the past year and a half?
Yes, we certainly have data, and before we proceeded with this organization, we implemented the pilot first because that was the first testing ground to determine its effectiveness. What we have found is that not only are our students very receptive to the model, but it also is one that many of our parents have embraced because they can also participate, since access to the speech pathologist is by computer. The feasibility to be able to provide services regardless of where students are has really been very, very progressive for us as a system. So we can certainly provide more quantitative data, but one of the most significant data points that we've accomplished as a district is that we are no longer a school district that is pervasively failing to provide speech and language services because of this particular expansion of our model.
Thanks very much. An additional question: this may be out of the purview of this conversation. Does this model, this digital model, allow for speech evaluations to be conducted through the digital format?
Yes, they participate in every single aspect of the role of a speech pathologist who's actually physically in our school system. So they're responsible for IEP participation, assessments, and every aspect of training that we do as well. And this program was developed and designed by speech and language pathologists.
Great. The reason I ask is, though, this is only accessible to the 22 schools who are going to be utilizing this. Is that correct? Not necessarily countywide or need-based?
That's right. We don't need this countywide because we do have, obviously, individuals who are permanent employees as well as contractual employees as speech and language pathologists. But the benefit of this is that in the event that we do find ourselves in a situation that there are unexpected vacancies, this particular service provider model really enables us to address that as well.
Great, thank you. The reason that question was prompted by, I guess, one of the previous public comment, someone I know who mentioned waiting on a speech evaluation for their student. That's what prompted that question, just so you understand.
Thank you for doing that. I'll be following up on that right away.
Sure, thank you. And then one additional question, just want to know, how did you all decide which 22 schools would be using this service versus which one did get a live in-person speech-language pathologist?
When we conducted our pilot, we analyzed the type of students that we thought this model might work with. And so that pilot really served as a basis for determining the best sets of populations of students for whom this service delivery model would be the most effective. And so the determination was really based upon the data we collected from the pilot.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Dr. Mason.
Thank you. Ms. Queen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. You asked one of my questions, but I want to go a little further on it. I want to thank all the speakers who came out and speak. And one of the speeches that was said by one of the PTA president was very, very important for us to understand as a board, that if you give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, you can feed him for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Because each and every person who come and speak on behalf of our kids are out here fishing, so our kids can be taken care of for a lifetime. So I thank you guys for that. And saying that, as Mr. Thomas just said, one of the parents said, the military parent, that their student was having a problem with speech. And they couldn't get service, so it bothers me to hear that, yes, they couldn't get service because, believe it or not, I may be doing a lot, but I listen really well. I'm a jack of all trades. But it bothers me that we were not able to give this parent service. So I just want to know, because as a military sister, my brother has many kids in the military, and as an aunt, it's very important. These kids move along a lot. We have to provide services for them. We have to start making sure that we take care of our military students. Different schools across the board has different rules and different reasons, for their way of policy. But we got to make sure that when they come to Prince George's County, they're taken care of. So I wonder if the service is going to be available for a lot of our military students.
It is definitely my intention to follow up immediately with regard to the parent who spoke tonight, because I did find it surprising to hear that particular comment, particularly given the tremendous success that we've had in addressing these matters. So we will definitely follow up, and I'll be reporting to Dr. Golson the outcome of our investigation.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Dr. Mason, for your work on this. Speech pathology is definitely a really important area of focus. I work with my speech pathologist at school on a daily basis. My first question was, how does the cost, I guess however you would measure it, compare to our traditional staffing model, outsourcing this versus traditional?
I would honestly have to really do a deeper analysis and provide you with that information to look at the cost between a permanent position with benefits and the cost for providing this particular service delivery model. And I believe we have this as a multi-year type of endeavor, but we can provide you with that information and analysis.
Okay, I think next time that would be really important information for the board to know, because as we look at permanent vacancies and why those things exist. Obviously, higher salaries plays into some of that, and depending how much we are paying to outsource it, it could be worth revisiting those pay scales and things such as that. My second question is more practical in terms of how this plays out in the school building. I assume like all of those services are typically pull-out services. So does like a staff member escort like students to a pull-out space from the general education classroom and back?
Yes, we work specifically with the principal to look at how the service delivery model will work in our schools. So we do have to have a designated person to support a student who goes to a certain area of the school to receive the services that the speech and language, pathologist does provide.
Okay, thank you. And the last question around the $1 million, it's $1 million a year?
This is over.
It says budget implication of $1 million, or is it $1 million over the 3 years?
The amount, it's over a period of time. I believe it's over 3 years.
And is that
Yes.
tied to a certain number of service hours or a certain number of staff, or how does that get allocated?
So the distribution of the utilization of this model will be, analyzed on an annual basis. We have to keep in mind that although it's 22 schools, we're also looking at that total caseload of students who require speech and language, services. So we have to look at what that caseload is by our schools. Speech and language therapy caseloads are typically pretty high caseloads. And so this particular service delivery model enables our district to be able to support students who otherwise would not receive services because of the national shortage.
Gotcha, thank you. And if you can follow up on just any details around the scope of work and those
Certainly.
costs, that'd be appreciated.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Colleagues, the vote is on item 5.1, the RFP speech-language teletherapy. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposing, no. Let the record reflect that it's unanimous. Colleagues, we will now move to item 7.1, this school calendar for 2020-21. May I have a motion to approve? It's been properly moved and seconded that the board approve item 7.1, the calendar for 2021. Mr. Valentine. Oh, Mr. Thomas. I keep on, we have to get that straight. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you very much. I was not at the board meeting when this was on first reader, so I want to apologize if I have any questions that are coming up a second go around. I want to just start by appreciating some of the things that I really do like seeing in this calendar. In particular, I very much am appreciative of the fact that this calendar is inclusive of different faiths and religions. This is something that we've heard numerous community members advocate for, and I'm glad that we heard their advocacy and acted accordingly. I also appreciated looking through the data that was sent out regarding the survey to employees of the system as well as community members. I think that's really informative to how we came to this final calendar. I wanted to just voice one concern that was brought to me by numerous constituents, which was around Christmas break in particular, and specifically it's starting on December 24th. That does seem to be a bit challenging, considering obviously the implications that has in place. So we're just curious as to what rationale you all could provide for that. Thank you.
So we're talk a little bit about process. I think it's important for the entire board to hear about process, so that may answer some additional questions. So we have a calendar committee that has stood up each year to review the proposed calendar that we submit to Dr. Golson. Dr. Golson ultimately submits 2 options to the board at first reader, second reader. Dr. Golson, after the survey, then selects a final option from her recommendation to the Board of Education. That calendar committee is comprised of close to 40 people. About 2/3 of that are internal stakeholders, our principals, 2 principals from each level, elementary, middle, and high. We also have PGCEA, ASASP 2250, and SEIU representation at each meeting. Dr. Golson this year actually added some additional folk. We have new parent representatives from each grade level, elementary, middle, and high, that were added. And those were parent leaders that were representative from our parent leaders associations that Dr. Golson meets with on a quarterly basis. We also had business participation. Rick Howarth from Six Flags, the largest employer of our of youth in the county, actually sat on the committee as well. We go through a number of iterations of conversations about what's important in the calendar. And this year we started almost from scratch. And part of that was because the decree from the governor that required post-Labor Day and June 15th was overturned by the state legislature. What was most important for our employees and for our community was that the calendar tried its hardest to meet a lot of demands. It's most important to note that our winter break is a winter break, not a Christmas break. And that's important because oftentimes that comes up about what are we celebrating? And really it's a winter break. So we had to be careful about a day before Christmas Eve, which would leave an indication that we're doing that specifically for Christmas. Montgomery County Public Schools and all of our other jurisdictions, we look at a bunch of other ones. About 3 of the 4 that are closest to us did the same thing. It's just the way the calendar fell this year. And sometimes it's just a fluke of that calendar. A lot of the other holidays, a lot of the other state mandated requirements are clearly identified. And we also had to look at some new things, professional development, which was a very large issue for our principals. And we added some religious observances, our Eids, the one Eid that fell within the school year, and a Jewish holiday that we had actually taken out of the calendar in previous years. So I wanted to make sure, because I know there's been a number of questions about it. I gave a comprehensive answer about the entire calendar. I hope I answered a little bit specific to the Christmas one.
Thanks, Mr. Rhodes.
Ms. Ahmed.
Yes, I'd like to echo Mr. Thomas's appreciation of certain aspects of the calendar. And Christian, Mr. Rhodes, thank you so much for explaining the process as well. It's really important to me that community members feel heard in the process of calendar development. It seems like you've done your due diligence in trying to make that happen. Online on board docs, there are several pages of documents right now with community input from the survey that went out. My question is specifically, can you verbally explain how the community input from the survey translated to the calendar that you've proposed before us?
Sure. So if we look at the calendar as a comprehensive document and not just individual days, Dr. Golson presented in the first reader 2 calendar options to the Board of Education. And for all intents and purposes, I'll distill it for 2 kind of clear distinctions. The first option looked at Columbus Day as parent-teacher conference. And when we moved Columbus Day as a parent-teacher conference, which was in October, we didn't use a professional development day. We moved it up to December instead of January.
You mean Native American Day, Indigenous
I
Peoples Day?
apologize.
Thank you.
I apologize. Native American Day, which will go in effect next year in Prince George's County. Prince George's County Council passed a resolution that starts next year. But yes, in our future Native American Day for Prince George's County. So we looked at that. We also looked at Veterans Day. And based off of which day we did parent-teacher conference, that pretty much shifted up or down the rest of our calendar. When we looked at the survey, we actually used the community portion of the survey to make the final distinction because the employee was basically 50-50. I think it was 49.7 versus 50.3 related to which day for parent-teacher conference. And I have to note, and many of the members who were on the committee can share this, the number one conversation about the calendar this year was not about when the winter break would be, when we would start school or after school. It was about parental engagement and parent-teacher conferences. We spent, Ms. Dudley was there and several others were there. We spent, Ms. Dr. Lassiter and others, we spent 2, 3, 4 hours talking about whether or not parent-teacher conference should be earlier in the semester, later in the semester, and in this particular calendar, you'll note for the first time that we actually have a second parent-teacher conference delayed opening in the second part of the year, and that was directly related to the group. So we made the calendar decision based off of the community portion of the survey, and ultimately I think it's a function of it is difficult, and I want to make sure everyone understands, it's difficult to get everything in, especially when we have state-mandated requirements. We're required to go to school 180 days, and we have to do 10,080 hours. That's the requirement. The state tells us what state required holidays and federal required holidays we have. And we tried our hardest to massage that and present to you the best calendar of all the options that we had available.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. I would just ask in future years to continue to involve community members as much as possible and actually make it very clear that, community input can actually change something, right? I can see that in some of the proposals that you brought forward, specifically with the religious observances. That's something we've been hearing for the past year as a board from different community members. But specifically, when it comes to putting out a survey, making sure that there's some clear way to explain to us, like you've done today, what are those things that community members were saying that we're implementing because we heard them. So thank you for that, and I just would request that in future years as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Mr. Omalola.
Dr. Golson, just like my former colleagues have said, I want to thank you so much for how inclusive this calendar is. But I do have a couple questions in regards to the purpose of, we have, I think, if I count more than 2 or 3 professional development days. What is actually being accomplished during these days, just to make sure we get some edification on what staff and faculty members will be doing?
So actually what we do is utilize the areas that we looked at throughout the school year to determine areas of support that we need to provide. Some examples of topics that we have used this year are implicit bias training for all of our staff members, providing additional support and training in areas of restorative practices, as well as looking at social and emotional needs and support to our teachers and learning how to deal with struggling learners, as well as how to deal with students who've had some behavioral issues.
All right, thank you. And I think maybe the question has been answered, but just to make sure I have a clear understanding about it. And the public comments that the Board of Education was able to view, I think if my number is correct, over 200 times post Labor Day is mentioned. So just again for edification, would you please clarify on why we're starting after?
Yep, so thank you for that. Let me clarify. Under the community survey, we had a total of 2,918 responses, and we had 395 comments about starting after Labor Day, which is equivalent to 13.5% of the respondents to the survey. And for the employee survey responses, we had 4,697 responses. We had 326 comments about starting after Labor Day, which is equivalent to 7% of the survey responses. When making a decision about options to present to the Board of Education, I made that decision based on comments already presented from the committee as well as the comments presented here. So it's important to note that even though you listed those numbers and I gave the exact numbers in the 300, it's not equivalent to more than the majority of responses that wanted after school. That's also why we provided those comments as well so that you could see. We manually went through and calculated those because I knew that that was an area that would be of question.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, I think this year we're on a 3-hour kind of calendar, and I think we're moving back to a 2-hour calendar. So just again for edification, because I know my peers will be asking me, why the switch?
That is correct. So we've ran into lots of operational concerns and issues around the 3-hour early dismissal for professional development, and you'll note in the comments, both in community and employee survey, there also were requests to go back to 2-hour professional development. We received many of those comments after the very first 3-hour early dismissal. I received lots of them in the emails. And asked that the calendar committee review that when they convened.
Okay. Then my last question was just to snow days, and how are we making sure that we're giving ourselves as much space as possible, because we know that when snow days do occur, spring break does tend to get shortened. So we want to just want to get some clarification on how we're monitoring that for the upcoming school year.
Because we do know that that is a very touchy topic. That was one of the questions that was presented in the community and employee survey, and you will see in the responses on, I want to say, it's one of the responses here that staff is overwhelmingly concerned about not touching spring break in the event that we have a large amount of inclement weather days. We've included in this calendar 3 days built in for inclement weather. Of course, as you know, we work diligently to monitor weather several days out. Of course, cannot control it, but to the best we can, we will make sure that our students and staff are safe first, and also take into consideration knowing that we only have 3 days built in, try not to exceed that time unless necessary.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Mr. Omalola. Mr. Murray.
I didn't have any questions. I just wanted to comment. Very happy to see the Eid holiday included, but I would have liked to see the post-Labor Day start that we've done the past couple years. I mean, I feel like it came through consistently as the top concern in my eyes and what I heard in my district, both from parents and teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rhodes brought it up. I want to publicly thank the administration and the calendar committee for the analysis and the option to have 2 parent-teacher conferences. It was something of interest, I think, for me about 2 or 3 years ago, and I know logistically it didn't make sense. But my question about the February 16th date is just the logistics of it. I don't know, it's not in previous years, it's been a holiday, a lot of people have been off work. But how would that logistically look for our school system? That too, I know how it works with schools, but when we're on snow delays. But with parents, they had to go to work early in the morning. How's that going to work?
It would serve almost like we have for a 2-hour delay, except staff would be required to go to work their regular time, and that would provide at least a space for families who are on their way to work to be able to come in and actually do a parent-teacher conference that will be scheduled. Now, I would say, because Ms. Teresa Dudley is here, and she talked about this extensively, we do not want to send a message that the only time that a parent can come in and talk to their staff is during these designated days. But we had a pretty large discussion about, it's an important I think, statement for the Board of Education and the system to dedicate those. But for logistics, it would just be a regular normal day. Just think of a 2-hour late arrival, and staff would come to work on time.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the next question I have is on May 13th. I'd love to see the holiday there as well. But I know that some other school systems in our area have had this discussion around the AP examination course window and how that's going to look logistically.
Dr. Golson actually, during first reader, looked at me and said, pull it up right now. I went to collegeboard.com, looked at it, and there is no AP test, actually no test at all that day. So that's why we were able to move forward.
Perfect. And the idea of kind of forward planning a year or 2 years in advance, has that been discussed by the calendar committee or the administration? I know when my wife and I were looking at having a cruise. I want to make sure that she's an employee of the school system. I want to make sure she's not getting in trouble. And so forward looking, 2-3 years down the line.
We are. This actually was the first year, as you know, where the calendar was in full authority for the Board of Education versus the bookends that we had previously. I think DCPS does a 3-year projected rollout, and we are looking at something similar. Probably in the next calendar, we'll have probably two proposed. It's tough to go past 2. It still provides an option if something changes in the second year. So.
I know that there were a lot of comments. I don't know the percentages, right? But I know there were a lot of comments about planning for family vacations, particularly around international travel for the winter holidays, spring break, of course. A lot of folks go out of town. I'm going way out of town. But just wanted to put that bug in you all's ear and see if it has been discussed. I yield back.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, we have 2 more comments from Mr. Thomas and Mr. Omalola, and then we'll vote, hopefully. I didn't see your light. Is your light on? I'll recognize you, Ms. Queen. Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I know it's, probably driving you a little nuts that I'm speaking again, so sorry. I wanted to just thank Mr. Rhodes for giving the context that you did. I think it's important that not only we know, but folks that are listening are aware of the process by which you all devised the schedule. I also wanted to thank Dr. Goldson for talking through your rationale about the percentage of the comments that went towards that. I have an actual follow-up question to that. So of the different comments that were made, you all did list the items that were the top mentioned areas or ideas, but it doesn't actually have that percentage that you gave us. So what would you be willing to share what that looks like in this moment, or? Yeah.
I could tell you what I did was then go to the next area. The second one was add the additional day, the December 23rd. For the community survey, there were 98 comments. And for the employee survey, there were 201 comments. And then for the other 3 after that, they all fell below 50. The numbers got even smaller as I went down those other ones.
So what it sounds like is like the request to start after Labor Day was the only one that had any quote unquote significant support, but even still only being a small percentage.
That is correct.
The reason why I asked that question is I'm just curious as to like if that was to be a survey question as opposed to an open-ended comment, right? I mean, there may be many more folks than if you're having an open-ended comment and that's overwhelmingly, more than the other comments that folks are making. It seems like that could have a lot of traction with folks.
So we did discuss that as an option for next year's survey. It's important to know that this year, Labor Day fell even later than it did this school year and in the previous years. And I actually happened to serve on a state committee when Governor Hogan was looking at changing the calendar, and we knew that 2021 would be difficult, which is why many of us were not in agreement at that time with the calendar proposed by the governor. But what's also important to know, which was brought up was from one of our board members, is that advanced placement exams also conclude earlier than they do this year. That's why we were able to accommodate the religious holiday of May 13th. With that said, starting after Labor Day also limits an additional week of instructional time that those seniors would have to prepare for not only advanced placement, but international baccalaureate exams. We want to provide our students as much time and opportunity as possible, and their families, to make sure that they're prepared and equipped to pass those exams, which could yield thousands of dollars of savings to those families when they go to college.
Thanks very much. I do agree with that. My last question is actually the opposite then. In thinking about ending early, I understand this may not be in play for this year, and there's obviously a lot of implications, but I've heard from many teachers and just school employees, like the concern of continued days after testing is completed. Obviously, we can't just have testing finish and then school be done. I understand that, but I know as well from my time in the classroom that this was true, that as an educator, there were a lot of these days that you kind of just had to be there, and you were expected, and it would come on the announcements that teachers' instruction should still be going as if it's a regular school day, even though testing is done. But it was almost this like hidden joke in the school that, yeah, we're supposed to be doing instruction, but what are we really supposed to be doing? So I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if there's anything that we're thinking about strategically as we move forward to make that time meaningful, but I just know that that's a source of tension for a lot of our teachers.
Dr. Golson, would you follow up with Mr. Thomas on that? Thank you. Mr. Omalola?
Mr. Rose, I had a question about, I know you said the committee is always looking at the calendar. One of the things that happens in Oregon, and I was speaking to some of my colleagues, representatives from Oregon, is that they have mental health days where students and staff take a day off to really just recuperate from how challenging and stressful school is. Can you provide any information about that and how that will look in Prince George's County?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that we can have as many days as we want to build into our calendar, and all that means it's a priority conversation. Mm-hmm. Mental Health Day compared to the day before Thanksgiving. If you look at the survey, there's some days in which our community and our employees do not want us to touch at all. Spring break is the number one, right? We're one of the few jurisdictions in the state of Maryland that provides an entire full week for spring break. That's a policy decision we made a long time ago, and one that we just have not touched since. The day before Thanksgiving is another one. So yes, I think there's a lot of great opportunities that we just have to make a decision whether or not we want to extend the calendar or what are we going to squeeze out of a calendar. That's just a priority conversation.
Okay. And then my last question is, does the state set times for elementary, middle, and high schools, or is that a county?
It's a number of hours. It's actually a number of hours, 1,080 hours, elementary, middle, and high. We actually do fairly well in our middle schools because we extended middle schools about 8 or 9 years ago. Maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we extended middle school. So we actually have a surplus of hours in middle. Elementary and high school, we're really short. We're close to it. So when Dr. Golson makes a decision not to close instead of a 2-hour early dismissal or a delay, those are some of the conversations that we have to have a conversation about, because if not, we'll be running across not meeting the hour numbers versus the days.
Thank you.
Mr. Montero, was your light on? Mr. Valentine.
Thank you very much. Cousin has taught. When the governor implemented this a couple years ago, the two concerns that I heard were, one, when you extend the summer, you do hurt parents who are on fixed income and have to pay for longer summer camps. And at the same time, you also cut into our ability to be flexible with regard to professional development. And so I think about the last day of school this year, and the last day of school that we propose, even though we're starting the school year later, that we're going to be actually ending on the same day. And so can you talk a little bit about more, maybe you all talked about this, but how many more professional development days we have in the calendar now, but also what it would mean for those parents who not having to send their child to summer camp for an extra week prior to Labor Day, what that would mean, because from what I'm hearing, that was an issue, particularly those students who are also really relying on school lunch as well. And so I know when Governor Hogan had put this forward, at least I personally had an issue with that because it seemed as if he was penalizing those parents to have to pay an extra week of summer camp at the advantage of those in Ocean City who really pushed for this because they wanted an extra week of economic development for the beach area.
So on the professional development side, for the last several years, and I yield to my instructional folk, the principals, associates, and others who were on the committee, what was discussed, and many others who were in the room, we really had limited opportunity for embedded professional development during the school year. We loaded up on the front end before school started, but once school started, we had very limited time where it was a full day dedicated. We tried our hardest this year with the 3-hour early dismissal, but that was really an operational nightmare for us because we had to accommodate for lunch, for example. We couldn't serve lunch before 10, but where some schools were getting out at 11 o'clock. So in this particular calendar, we have 3 full-day professional development opportunities that are vetted throughout the year, in addition to the ones that are before this school year starts. And we listened to the committee. The principal, I use a particular elementary school principal who said, listen, I'm looking at my data, and I know that we're struggling in math, but I don't have enough time with my math teachers to discuss what we need to do. So that's one of the conversations. It relates to free and reduced meal families and summer break. The reality is that the district really subsidized a lot of costs to try to make sure our families were still having somewhere to go. We offered up more summer feeding sites. During that extra week, we actually were expending our own dollars to cover that cost because we knew our families, many of which who are solely dependent on us feeding them during that time frame. And the last thing I'll say is that oftentimes this conversation is a school system conversation, but the reality is that Park and Planning and other nonprofit organizations provide those summer camps. So if you don't expand the number of offerings, like they shut down that last week because, and there was a gap week in between. And that's where we bury the cost. So unless everyone is doing more, then the burden is on us to figure out how to cover those costs.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. And our final question is from Ms. Queen. Yep. 3 minutes.
How many contracted days are we required to give for professional development? That's my first question.
Are you stating from MSDE? We're not required.
So we're not required. We're just doing, so I just wanted to be clear on that. And I want to state as a Prince George's County Public School student, I remember when we've always started back after Labor Day. I remember when teachers came after the first week in August, and they did all that development then, and the kids came after Labor Day. So I'm wondering, why are we actually affecting our students and our parents by making them come back before Labor Day, when a lot of that could be done for the teachers when they can do a lot of this in August? So that's my first question. Another thing is, I heard you talk about the board, the people who came together, but I didn't hear you saying these students were on the board. So I just want to, I got a lot of calls and complaints from parents, and so 2 of my children were there with me, and one just graduated last year, so I asked them their concerns. And my student who graduated this year just passed said she felt like she did better when she came back after Labor Day. So my question to you is, have we did a statistic to find out how our students did? Do they do better coming back after Labor Day, or were they doing better when they came before? Statistically, how have we tested and look at this, or are we just deciding to make these decisions and not realizing how it's affecting our students? So that's a couple of questions. I'll let you go ahead before you forget some of them more.
So let me first start by saying the community survey with 2,918 respondents, 63% of those were students. And so their voice was overwhelmingly heard in the response to the surveys, and you have that results. The second piece is, did we do a quantitative analysis to determine the effect of before Labor Day or after Labor Day on student achievement? Mathematically speaking, we don't have enough time and data to be able to make that analysis. Note that we only started after Labor Day for the past 2 years. So it'd be difficult to attribute any academic success to the change in before or after Labor Day. Once again, there'd have to be a whole lot of factors that we would take into consideration, as I shared before, about the advanced placement, international baccalaureate exams, and then the amount of time spent on task, as well as the number of days that were spent during the school day versus the number of days we had for inclement weather and those that were not, and when they fell throughout the school year. So that would be a very difficult analysis. Not saying that it can't be done, but it was not done for this calendar.
Okay, so just to let you know, we used to start after Labor Day when I was in school. So it's been done for a while in our school system, and we may need to actually look at that. Another thing is, I want to say to you guys that we're living in a flex society where we have to learn to have flex dates for students and parents. We have a lot of diversity, a lot of people here from a lot of cultures, a lot of country, and they expect our school system to be a 24/7 and flexible school system. I shared with some of my colleagues, and I'm going to share with you guys, my daughter works at school in California. They have a little bit of flexibility for students, and we need to start looking at that, and I'm asking you guys to look into in Prince George's County. On Monday, they have a flexibility to be an hour late. That's every Monday. That's their flexibility, and it doesn't be charged against. They also have a flexibility, and we really need to look at it up to 30 days. If someone, for instance, when they have the military issues, or for instance, when maybe they need to come back after Labor Day because the kids, I have grandkids to go to Trinidad and Tobago every holiday, maybe because they need to be in it, but they have a 30-day flex where work can be given in a package, and these kids are not charged to miss. We need to start getting up to date in Prince George's County because it's done in California and other counties, and maybe we can implement that, and then we don't need to worry about all these unnecessary days because we're given a flexibility and we're being diverse with the society we have. So sometimes change has to come within. We have to learn to go outside the 9 dots as a board and realize that we have to be diversity and we have to get up to date with the society we live in.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. Ms. Queen, I'm sorry.
You're welcome.
Colleagues, that exhausts our speakers. Mr. Valentine, for 3 minutes.
It won't take that long. I just want to make one other point, and I've written about this, and this is something that's important to our district as well, which is summer learning loss. Every week that children are not in school or in a structured learning environment, they're losing. And we spend oftentimes the first few weeks of a school year having to reteach something that was taught the previous year. And so if we're thinking about the system moving it forward, everything I talked about, whether it be the economic impact on families who have on a fixed income trying to pay for camp. I have 2 children. It is not cheap. And I will also say the idea that we're getting more professional development days, I love it. At the same time, the impact of summer learning loss, and it can be calculated by the week, how much children lose and gain if they're back into the school building, I think will pay dividends for the system, for the students, and more importantly for teachers who are really trying to start on day one to play catch up in a lot of instances when our students are behind. And so we keep that in mind. How is this going to help the long-term achievement of our students? I think we've done a good job, and so I would support this calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Colleagues, your vote is on item 7.1 as properly moved and seconded. Those in favor of it, please say aye. Aye. Those opposing, no.
No.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Ms. Ahmed.
Aye.
Ms. Boozer Strother.
Aye.
Mr. Burrows. No. Mr. Montero.
Aye.
Mr. Murray.
No.
Mr. Omalola.
No.
Ms. Queen.
No.
Ms. Shepherd.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Valentine.
Aye.
Mr. Wallace.
Aye.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Dr. Thornton.
Yes.
10 yeses, 4 noes.
Thank you. And Dr. Golston, thank you very much, and the staff for the calendar. Colleagues, at this point, I'm going to recognize, as we always do, 1 point of personal privilege, and that's for Mr. Thomas.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to take this moment to acknowledge a moment in history that we're celebrating today. On January 9th, 1914, on the campus of Howard University, my alma mater, 3 visionary men founded the organization that has now withstood the test of time, an organization that was founded on the principles of brotherhood, scholarship, and service. That is the one and only Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. And I'm a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I'm a proud Spring 2012 initiate of the Alpha chapter at Howard University, where this org was founded 106 years ago today. And I just wanted to take a moment to recognize a few individuals that are remarkable and visionary in the fields of education. That is George Washington Carver, Brother Elaine Leroy Locke, who was the first African-American Rhodes Scholar, Dr. Rod Page, who was the first African-American U.S. Secretary of Education. Also want to acknowledge some civil rights activists who are part of why we are where we are today, Brother Huey P. Newton, Brother Asa P. Randolph, but also want to acknowledge some of our incredible political leaders, Brother John Lewis, who we are thinking about and praying for, as well as the late Brother Elijah Cummings. And most importantly, on this stage, on this platform, want to acknowledge the many dedicated, committed, hardworking brothers that are employed by Prince George's County Public Schools, administrators, school service employees, teachers in the classroom. Thank you for what you do. Wishing you all a very happy Founders Day. Go Mob, our cause speeds on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burrows.
Happy Founders Day, my son.
Am I allowed to respond on the days to that, or?
Alrighty. One night.
Thank you. Colleagues, now we'll have a motion to approve actions taken in executive session.
So moved.
Items involving employee appeals, personal appointment, CEO report from the Board Executive Director, and administrative matters, internal audit. Motion is to approve those actions. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. The ayes have it. A motion is in order for adjournment.
Second.
Probably moved and seconded that we adjourn. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposing, no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much, everyone.